Philosophers talk to our times. Bloodlines of Greece. Just recap and summary, really. Because I think I'm muffed by not emphasizing it enough. That when I was talking about Aristotle and going a bit into Spinoza, we were at one of the great divisions in political thought. And it's worth pointing this out because this is a division that absolutely matters to us and the way we understand what revolution or change can look like. There are two ways you can respond to complicated structure. If something like a body, if the coordination of being alive feels too great to understand, what do you do? What do you assume? Well, perhaps the most obvious thing to assume, as we are humans, is that there is some agency that might be simple in itself, that is for creating this complexity. That agency, that singularity, that singular simpleness that comprehends all this complexity. Could be time, or it could be life, or it could just be the movement act. Aristotle represents one extreme, one way that this idea that you had a simple, that it created the complicated by indwelling inside it. The ultimate formula being that, of course, de anima. Things are living because they have something immaterial, an immaterial soul. Because the point is about such causes, simple in themselves, is they can't be directly perceived in their actions. They're not there pulling the levers, otherwise they'd be part of the problem because you'd have to understand them. It is their very immateriality that allows them to have the unity to explain by saying we've explained it, where the complexity of a body comes from. It's a slightly queer idea, if you actually think about it. Of course, it is the argument for intelligent design, as much as there is an argument for intelligent design. But it's also the argument for unintelligent design as well. By unintelligent design, I probably mean not design. I'm meaning Dawkins. I'm meaning that theory of evolution where you can say it's a random length of DNA that modifies its chances in the world. And therefore, once it started to modify its chances and increasing them by creating this trait rather than that trait, you can start to talk about evolution as a sequence of micro steps. But each micro step in itself involves a little bit of a plan, a little bit of a plan, a little bit of a plan that gets followed. The idea then that you can have a big man in charge, pulling the levers, making things simple, that cuts through the complexity, is very seductive in a world of monarchies. It is, of course, the dominant player in state power, but also corporate power. There's a man that says these things and we do it this way. Or even corporate culture. That's what we do in this company. But of course, there is the other way you can understand complexity. Back in the day, and with one of my other maths hats on, I used to get very excited about complexity theory, mathematically. Because what complexity theory does is give you another way to understand why and where order comes from in the universe. Spinoza might be right, rather than Aristotle. For Spinoza, the order of a body actually arises spontaneously once you've got reciprocally removing parts, so that as one move it communicates whatever it does to the next, and so on and so on and so on, as long as the body actually exists. Bodies then are not structured forms, and they don't have a living essence that makes them alive. The life comes rather from the complexity. Well, really, actually, in the proper Spinozian canon, life becomes the case because things are alive when their idea of the thing, their perception of it, is actually inside the body, inside the idea of the body. Now, that's a little bit technical, and I'd have to take you through all the propositions. But the point is that Spinoza has a definition of life that isn't dependent upon a living thing, and that needs an actually existing body in order to get going. So essence is not the cause of life, it's the product once you live. And why can you do this? Because you get complexity for free. Order is spontaneous. Once you get a very large number of interreacted elements to any system, they will all cascade in their interactions. It tends to cause ordered systems. Chaos gives way to order. Nobody creates that order. Oh, there are initial moves, which no doubt genes in this model are. They're the initial swerves that encourage you to go one way rather than the other way. But once those swerves are done, the actual cascade of order is got for free. There are a certain number of things you could have. It does not need, then, of the philosophy of final causes. And this, of course, is the great paradox, I suppose, of the state. How do you understand a state? What do you understand a state does? There is the traditional monarchist way of understanding a state, where it is the king and is the decisions. It is the unity of the state itself. Or you can understand it as that which is created by the hidden hand of interactions, one with the other, that creates its own order. Or you could say that that order was a culture, and the role of a state is to allow that spontaneous creation to resonate and to form useful connections for humanity. Now, why does this all matter to you? It matters because it matters what you understand by change and how you think change could happen in this world. Could it ever happen top down? No. I think there's never been any much evidence of the Aristotelian model that things happen because there's a happening thing has any analytical validity. Changes happen because states enable people to set up new interrelations, new interconnections. As a good Marxist, any good Marxist would know, this is in fact what Marx thinks is the great thing about capitalism. It creates, through creative destruction, a way that things can come and go and connections can be built between people. What Marx wants to do is to not smash those connections, but rather open up their potentiality. So you don't just connect by money, you can connect in social ways as well that are felt to be economically, socially viable and valuable. It's wanting to expand humanity so that we allow interconnections and to society to form between lots of different interconnections, sort of thing, rather than let's just smash the state. It's why Marx famously thinks that revolutions evolve out of capitalism. My point is then that revolutionary model where you actually get the order for free is of course the model that is the curse and blessing of ecology. And the ecological system is a classic example where the order isn't made by anybody. There's no God up there saying, oh, I'll have a little beetle there and another beetle there and another beetle there. It emerges because once you've got lots of interacting elements, they tend to create ordered environments, or at least structured environments. You get the order for free. And that also explains why climate chaos is so chaotic, because what climate chaos is doing is shaking up the kaleidoscope. If you shake it up, the order will reassert itself, but differently. It might be more simply, it might be more complicatedly. It is very unlikely to include humanity in the reordering that it makes. It's why climate change is misnamed as anything other than encroaching climate chaos and another order without humanity in it, because that's what you're talking about. But once you understand it as just humans do this or humans do that or we do this so it warms up, you've already lost how you understand it. And that, of course, matters, because people can find exceptions and say, well, the Arctic's getting colder, so climate change isn't happening. It's because you've used the wrong system for explaining. The problem is not that one thing will lead to another, but rather that we're shaking up the entire system. It also goes without saying that one of the things that the complexity model thinks a state ought to be doing is enriching the communications between people, but never getting involved within the order. So revolutionary movements need to be spontaneously curated, so allowed for, and then their structures evolve in time. So that division between Spinoza and Aristotle between whether some things are caused because they're sneaked in, or they're caused because the order emerges spontaneously. It's the great political division of our time, cutting across left and right, and one in whose consequences we're going to act and live. So you better always think about it when you're deciding what politics to understand.